Ciao, ragazzi, and welcome back to the FORZA CALCIO Podcast. I wish I was coming to you from a better mood and a better situation, but this week's episode, we're looking at the situation with the Azzurri, with the FIGC. Italy failed to qualify for yet another World Cup. That's 3 in a row after being beat by Bosnia. And over the week since that happened, we've seen Gravina resign, Buffon resign, and Gattuso resign, and calls for FIGC-wide reform from top to bottom. People are calling for the whole thing to fall. So this week we are diving into that. I am joined by Matt Santangelo from That Milan Podcast, and we're diving into the managerial situation at Azzurri. We're looking at the Italian coaching system, how Italy have failed to evolve tactically, both at the club level and the national team level. And we're looking at how youth progression in Italy is at an all-time low. When you look at the youth teams at the Azzurri level into the first team, there's a massive, massive disconnect. And I think we're at a point when Italian football is in serious need of pressing the big red button and starting again entirely. So yeah, thank you to Matt for joining us. You can find all of his links in the description below. We had a really good chat about the state of the Azzurri, about the state of the Italian football system as a whole, where we think it's going wrong, and what we think needs to happen going forward. This is the FORZA CALCIO Podcast. Don't forget to subscribe. Don't forget to drop a follow, drop a rating. It really helps the podcast grow. You can find me on all the socials as well. We're going to dive straight into the Azzurri. As I say, I wish I'd come to you on better terms and with better news, and we were discussing something a bit less doom and gloom. But this is Italian football, so there's a lot of issues stemming across it. We try to dive into some of the key ones in this episode, and I hope you all enjoy. Okay, so thanks for coming on, Matt. I wanted to ask you one question to start the podcast. Who do you think right now is the right man to take over at the Azzurri to go forward with, managerial-wise?
I've mulled over multiple names over the past day or so. One of them is Maurizio Sarri, because I think he plays the 4-3-3 that I think Italian football and the national team need. Something that's a little bit more modern, utilizes wingers, and shifts away from that 3-5-2 that I feel is getting a very bad rep these days. And not to say that you can't play a 3-5-2. We've seen Conte play a 3-5-2 with the national team in 2016 at the Euros and had some success. And we've seen it, get results amongst, the top clubs in Serie A. But I think there needs to be a little bit more flexibility and less rigidity when it comes to formations, tactics. You need to find players that can be expressive, take guys on, be athletic, be dynamic, game changers. And I think a formation like that requires a coach, someone like Maurizio Sarri. And I've also seen, reports say that Max Allegri and Antonio Conte are contenders for the job. But I think what's good about what we're hearing is managers that have had plenty of success. For all the greatness we've seen from Gennaro Gattuso as a player over the years in his entire career, he was one of the last names that I think Italian fans were looking for as an answer on the bench. So I think to start fresh here, get someone who has had a proven track record of success in pressurized situations, because it is one of those, is I think the way that Italy needs to go when appointing their next manager.
I really like the Maurizio Sarri shout, because I absolutely love Maurizio Sarri. He's probably one of my favourite coaches in the game.
Yeah.
And I think his tactical mind is just brilliant. My concern about Maurizio Sarri is, and I think it's a battle that the national setup always has, regardless of country as well, is the hands-on approach that he wouldn't have. And
right.
and I guess the concern for me would be, and this is why I sort of, speaking up until the Bosnia game, I was kind of hoping to give Gattuso a bit more of a chance, because I don't know if you agree, but I think when you don't have the hands-on approach as you do as a club, it's hard to be quite a tactical heavy manager. And I think whilst I don't think Luciano Spalletti's time at Italy was as bad as everyone seemed to think. I mean, you go into qualifying, they win 6 games out of 8. I think it's one of them ones where Italy are in a position where they're struggling already and Spalletti takes over. So my doubt would be from Maurizio Sarri would be that hands-on tactical approach, like the everyday working that he won't have. Would that hinder him as an Azzurri coach? I don't know what you think about that. Do you agree with a tactical manager as Sarri and Spalletti not having hands-on approach actually is detrimental to them as a coach at the Azzurri, and that's why they prefer your sort of club side?
I think that's the tricky part about hiring a manager that has been known for having club success and then trying to shoehorn them into an international role, right? The details are everything when it comes to a lot of these coaches when the national team, right? There's the big personalities, there's, getting all these big personalities and players to fit within a cohesive system. And I think that Maurizio Sarri, to your point, it's valid, right? This is a detail-oriented coach, a coach that likes the day-to-day grind, the hands-on to sculpt and carve his team and play the football in his own image, right? And I think with the national team, you struggle with that because you don't see these players on a day-to-day basis. You see them every couple weeks, months sometimes, and it's like, oh, hey, welcome back. Hey, let's pick right back up with what we were doing. They're professionals, I get it. But the personnel, when you see the national team, is constantly changing too. This guy's out, he's banged up, he can't call. Now all of a sudden you're having to kind of pivot. So I think it's going to be really fascinating to see which direction they go in. But I'm just speaking purely on the style of football. I think that Sarri would bring something more modern, something more progressive. And I think that's really what Italian football needs at this point. And I think, kind of just tying it back to the domestic league, coaches like Cesc Fabregas have come in, played a very stylish, appealing brand of football, creating goals, exciting, but they also defend well. So there is a way you can accomplish both. And I think that's going to be the challenging part when bringing in that next coach.
Yeah, I think I do agree, and I think, but I would caveat that with the fact that Antonio Conte, I would put him down as a similar sort of wants the hands-on approach at the club, but he seemed to do okay with the Azzurri at the time, and he did it with a worse squad as well. And I don't know if it's more credit to Antonio Conte, but I would be confident in saying that Maurizio Sarri could do similar. But I have my doubts, and I think I have my doubts across every manager that's been currently suggested. I mean, you've got Max Allegri, as you mentioned. You've got Antonio Conte returning, which I'm not entirely sure about. It depends on how much of a fallout he has between now and the summer with Napoli. You got Roberto Mancini potentially coming back. I don't know. It depends on who comes in as the president. But I wanted to get your thoughts on Gattuso. Obviously, you are a Milan fan as well. But as a coach, his career not exactly glittering. I think that's safe to say. But I don't think much of the blame. I think some of the blame needs to be put on Gattuso's shoulders for the squad selection, for example. For the two games, I think we can get on to the actual games and his mistakes there. But I wanted to get your thoughts on the fact that it's just a deeper issue, and I think Gattuso's sort of been thrown to the wolves a bit with this one. I don't know what you think on Gattuso, and was there ever a thought in your mind where you could see Gattuso sort of panning out at the Azzurri?
I think it was a long shot. I mean, look, I have no ill will, disrespect towards Gattuso, the man. He's done everything as a player. He is one of those bullish renegade types that you want in your corner. And I thought at the very least that he would bring some of that personality, charisma, and character to this Italy team as far as mentality goes. And the fact that this mentality that we just saw was so fragile and so fractured and it crumbled in the face of pressure, that's what makes it a bit surprising. But I think to your point, there is a deeper issue, right? Because I think when you're looking at the Italian national team and the failures of 2018, 2022, and 2026, I think it's pretty clear for most people about what the problems are and where the root cause is to all these issues. And I think that in the wake of what we just saw play out against Bosnia, I think most Italian fans are pretty open-minded and accepting of the fact that, hey, like, Gattuso's just the one. He's just a casualty of the system that's failed many before him, including players, including the youth, talent that we've seen, rise and ascend very quickly with the U17s and the successes of the 21s and 19s, and then fall face down and not even get opportunities in the first division. So I think there's a lot of variables and things at play here that ultimately led to Gattuso's failure and Ili's failure. And I think if you ask most people about how they feel towards Gattuso, I think it's probably the same as I feel. Like, look, he didn't do a great job, but like, he was one of the last names they actually went for, and nobody wanted this job, which tells you everything you need to know.
Yeah, I think that's a key point, is that no one actually wanted this job, and Gattuso, I think, out of blind passion and sort of commitment to
Yeah.
the national team, took it. And I think,
honor, like, hey, like
yeah,
no one's stepping up to take this job, like I'll do it. I'll put
and
my
I think
neck out there.
that's very telling of Gattuso's character, both
Yeah.
like when he was a player and clearly as a man, he is that type of guy. He's like, I'll do this. And I think credit where it's due. I personally really liked the commitment and sort of dedication he showed to the job. He travelled around Italy, meeting all the players. I think it was Calafiori who came out and said he spoke to Gattuso recently more than his own mother. And I think the commitment he showed was, I think, credit where it's due. Yeah, I think that's admirable for a situation he was in. But I think, yeah, as you say, he is just a casualty of a wider issue that we're seeing. But I do think that there is some criticism that needs to be put on his door, because when you look at
side, sure.
Selection, I think, I mean, I don't know what you think, but I don't buy into the fact that this squad is as bad as everyone seems to make out. I think, yes, there's systemic issues, and I think there's a youth development issue, and I think this squad is probably sort of a culprit of an unfair comparison. I think a lot of Italian teams will be compared to them of 2006, and I think that's a very harsh comparison to do, because not many players in the history of the game are going to live up to some of them players. You look at Buffon, Cannavaro, like you got Totti, Del Piero. These are some of the best ever in the game, especially in Europe. Like these guys are some of the best ever. And you're looking at Italian squads post that, you're going to be compared to unfairly compared. So I don't buy into the squad being as bad as it is. I'm not saying they're fantastic.
People still do it with the 90s, right? Everyone keeps clamoring back with the 90s for, oh, Serie A used to be so good in the 90s. I'm like, yeah, that was like pinnacle of Italian football, like 80s, you know, like.
You're like looking at the best league in the world there, where you're getting players like Maradona going and Ronaldo, and you've got Baggio. So like, it's an unfair comparison to go, like, it's not. But I think, whilst I'm saying that I think Gattuso got his squad wrong, I think you look at Politano starting, he's not good enough. You look at Bastoni, essentially, he's not good enough down the middle. He's missed an opportunity. I think he fell victim to trying to squeeze in Calafiori and Bastoni. I think it's akin to that of when England used to try and put Gerrard and Lampard in the same lineup. You can't.
You're trying to put all your top players on the field at once.
Yeah, exactly. So I think the squad selection, and I think to watch the Northern Ireland game and then see Gattuso just copy and paste the lineup, and I'm like, did you not see Bastoni essentially and how he couldn't make it work? Did you not see Retegui up front and how? So I think there's two parts to it. I think Gattuso, I think he was a poison chalice at the end of the day. I think he came into a job with pride, but it was never really going to work out for him in the grand scheme of things. It's an Italian team and an Italian system that is set up for anyone to come into it to really fail, apart from an anomaly of Roberto Mancini taking Italy to obviously the Euros. But when you look at the wider picture, it's not exactly a promising job to take. So fair play to him for taking it, but I think criticism where it's due as well. I think his team selection was all wrong. I wouldn't have personally went for that against Bosnia. But I do think 90 minutes with 11 men on the pitch, I think they win. I don't know what you think. I don't know if you agree. I think they win that game without the Bastoni sending off. And then we're not talking about this. They go to the World Cup. With Bastoni not getting sent off, we go to the World Cup. We're not talking about reform, because it's all like it's
Which
I
also think is a problem. Which I also think is a problem too, because I think truthfully, even if Italy did qualify, right, like they limped through that game. Let's say they won in penalties, right? They converted. Donnarumma showed up, and and then they broke the cycle, right? They broke the curse.
Yeah.
If you're asking any Italian football fan, Italy fan, okay, how do you feel about the World Cup going into it? Knowing what we have seen in recent World Cups when they did qualify, 2014, 2010. Yeah. Do you feel good about Italian football heading into this World Cup? This is just 2 months away. I think I would be remiss to think that all of a sudden the script would flip and all of a sudden everyone's like, I feel good. I think we get Italy. So in a way, when people say it's got to get worse before it can get better, maybe that's what it is, because now you're seeing Gravina he steps down, Buffon steps down, great player, Buffon, not taking away from him, steps down. There's got to be accountability at the federation level and on down for this to actually get better. But getting back to that game, I think the way I look at that Bastoni incident, because that's what everyone's going to gravitate towards naturally, the way the Bosnia player was running, where Bastoni was, and just the simple fact that Donnarumma is probably the best shot stopper in world football. I think if you ask Bastoni, like, hey, like, would you, looking back at it, would you have done differently as far as, committing to that challenge instead of letting it play out? Because I think Donnarumma closes down. Worst case, it's a corner. I mean, at that point, they had so many corners anyway. So I think if you let that game play out and if they score, fair play to them. But it's 1-1, 11v11, it's a different conversation. You're not facing a barrage of corners, crosses into the box. That's what they were doing. It was very predictable. Bosnia was spamming crosses into the box. Italy were too narrow. If you looked at the second half approach, there were clear narrowness from the Azzurri, and everything was out wide. Okay, let's throw crosses into the box for the 6'4", 6'5" players, and eventually one's going to stick. You have Dzeko. You have some of those big, thunderous, lumbering center backs and forwards. Just put crosses in a box, and they got one to stick, and that's all you need. And eventually, tired legs were going to show for Italy. They did. And you saw how it played out.
Yeah, exactly. And I don't think Bosnia, apart from the crosses, were going to threaten Italy in a way that we'd have to be worried. But yeah, I think peppering the box with crosses was their tactic. But I do strongly believe that 11v11, even if that one where, as you say, Bastoni doesn't make the challenge and he goes on to score, 1-1, 11v11, I'm confident that Italy go on to win that game. And
how many players are beating their defender on their left foot and trying Donnarumma from there?
Yeah, exactly. And it's exactly that. So you look at that, Bastoni's making that challenge, stupidly made the challenge. And you can argue he's been put in a position by his goalkeeper to do that. But I feel like a more calm, experienced head would have been able to sort of shepherd that out and not panic. And I think that's what's coming. I think he's panicked. And then you go on to concede, whether or not you believe it was a foul. I don't know. I thought there was one, but I think that's just clutching at straws. But if Italy win that, I don't think we don't see the outcome we've seen over the last few days. I don't think we see Gravina resign. We don't see
at least
anything
not
like
as aggressive. Not as aggressive.
No. And I do think there is a problem there still, as you say, because it's papering over cracks if they were to go on. But I guess my point is now, going back to it's got to get worse before it gets better. I think that is an exact point. I think you've got to tear it all down and practically start again. I think you've seen nations do that as well. When you look at it, you've seen France sort of do it. You've seen Germany do it. You've seen Spain do similar. England. I compared Gattuso to the situation with Gattuso. I compared to a Southgate, for example, because Southgate's managerial career wasn't great in terms of club. He was not good. He came into the coaching setup in England. You look at Roy Hodgson leaves after the Euros. You look at Sam Allardyce takes over and plays one game, gets sacked for whatever, that whole saga. And Southgate steps up, and you would look at him and go, tactically, from his past, Gattuso's had a better managerial career than what Southgate had. Personally, I would say as a club level. And you bring in the next player who's sort of been through some emotional moments, especially for England, and then Gattuso comes in. I felt maybe if he could get to the World Cup, he could rely on sort of that approach, and he maybe steadies the ship a bit. But I think the comparison is, I think Southgate and England managed to rebuild in that sense, and England now have a team that they can sort of be proud of, and a nation who are always in there now to challenge, going from where they were to now. My comparison was maybe Gattuso can help Italy sort of do that, but I think the problems run a lot deeper, a lot more.
The talent pool. I think you look at, and I just did a reel on this too, on the state of Italian or state of talent development within Italian football, and it's interesting. You look at how did that 2006 World Cup team get put together? Of course, that was the last time they won a knockout match at the tournament. Those players had successes of the early 90s at the U21 level. And we've seen recently the U17s, the 19s, the 20s have good amounts of success where, okay, it might not be a conversation of is there talent. It's just a commitment to that talent, commitment to their futures. And I think when you make that comparison between Italy and England, there are similarities, yes, but look at the wide talent gap of players, and talent can sometimes prevail and paper over issues and tactical limitations and all those sorts of things. We've seen that on many occasions in football. So I think, again, the only way Italian football moves forward in a positive light, in a positive way, is top on down, it's reform, and the fish rots at the head.
Yeah,
That's what it is. And these other people have to go too.
I think the reform, I think Gravina going is a start. I think that is a very small step in the right direction. I think the whole thing's got to fall down. I think there's got to be a reform across the board, because you're looking at, as you mentioned, the youth teams. The youth teams of the Azzurri don't do too bad in terms of success. No. They're decent sides. You look at one. I think it was at the under-21s, it might be the under-21s beat Sweden 4-0, playing a 4-3-3 with wingers. You had
4-3-3 formations.
Yeah. So, and then you come into the main one and then just go 3-5-2 and I just feel there's such a disconnect between that progress, and I think a lot of it also comes down to maybe a club situation where you're looking at these B teams who are coming in, and whether or not you agree from it. I know some people who want to see youth development agree with the B teams, and then you look at your more hardcore fans who don't want to see B teams. You look at your Serie C and your Serie D fans who don't want these B teams because their clubs are hindered from it. But you look at the wider, if you're talking about the Azzurri context, you look at that, but they're not even being really executed properly. Milan's got relegated. Inter's are
to do it better this year, but the project has been a bit of a mess so far.
Yeah, and then Inter's is sort of edging into the playouts and stuff like that.
This is really just a farm system, if you will, to develop a player and sell him for pure profit.
Yeah, exactly. So there's not actually any progression there, really. So the whole youth development approach that they're trying to do, where they don't want to give players starting games in the Serie A, they build a B team, put them in Serie C, and it goes, they're either farming players or they're getting relegated, or you never see these players actually come through, really. You look at Kamada. I know you're a Milan fan, so you'll know better than me, but a Kamada, for example, he plays for Futuro, Serie C. He's at Lecce and he's not playing. I don't know what your thoughts are on that sort of progression for Kamada. I think he's a good example to use, because then you can compare him to, I think, Pio Esposito, for example, who has a really good season at Serie B, and now Inter are putting trust into him and giving him minutes. Yeah. I don't know what you think on that front.
That's the key, is that Inter, they're putting the trust in him, right? Like that is, and this isn't to blame any single club, right? Because I think it's unrealistic for you to ask big clubs like a Juve, a Milan, an Inter, a Napoli, for example, to say, hey, there are so many financial ramifications for missing out on your objectives. I need you to play 18, 19-year-olds. I get that part of it. But when you look at the way some of these teams are built and constructed in Serie A, they're playing next to no Italians. Less than 9 rostered on some teams. Como, just as an example, because it's so drastic between them and some of the other teams, Como have given 2 minutes, a minute to Italians this year, and they play amazing football. Fabregas has done an excellent job. There is no denying that. But they might make the Champions League and have given no opportunity to Italians in the process. So it's like, where does the responsibility fall? Does it fall at the club level? I think there has to be some element of that. I'm not saying that every single 11 that gets trotted out on a given match day needs to be comprised of all Italians. No. But I think 67 to 68% of Serie A is foreigners. We need to at least kind of look at this and say, we understand that you buy players from abroad, and that's really sometimes the only route that some of these clubs can make, because truthfully, they need to find the diamond in the rough to then sell, to fund their growth, their development, and fund it, because there's no money in the league. So I get that. But it's almost like a survival of the fittest element. But what's the excuse for some of these other clubs, right? We're not even seeing a lot of Italians come out of Juventus. You have Locatelli, Gatti, but where's everybody else? Yeah. Where's the opportunities? Finally, we're seeing Moretti. Looks like a pretty good player. Finally gets the opportunity with Juventus this year. Rovella was someone under Allegri. He gets bounced around. They didn't want to keep him. He goes to some other clubs. He looks good at Lazio, right? We don't see him in the equation because I think he's been injured. There is talent within this Italian football system. There is. Look at the evidence that we just saw in a small sample over this recent international break. You have Italy limping and struggling against these nations, and then you have their U21s bludgeoning teams 4-0. Granted, North Macedonia and Sweden, right? I think Sweden was the other team, are not the elites of the elites, but they're still footballers in the same age bracket. And Italy's playing a good brand of football, and they're getting good results. So I think that breakdown comes in from a lack of commitment from Serie A clubs to even give them the opportunity, because they almost favor developing every other nation's players but their own.
Yeah, I think I completely agree. I don't know. It's a hard one, but I think it all comes back down to the actual federation and the running of the game. Because as you say, there's no money in the league. That comes down to the management from the top. So so clubs don't want to trust in youth players from Italy and don't want to make that, because the ramifications of not qualifying for a Champions League is financially terrible for every single club that relies on that revenue. So therefore, they're not willing to risk it. So then you look at, because they don't want to lose out on that money. So I think we can talk about youth development and whether or not these players should be going on loan to Serie B or Inter should be giving them chances or Milan should be giving them chances. But in reality, sometimes the club's hands are tied. It's good to see that your Bartasaghi, for example, is coming through. But then even then, you don't take a punt on him in the full Azzurri squad, and you put him in the under-21s and Coyote as well, for example.
And they didn't really even take an opportunity on Bartasaghi. The only reason why Bartasaghi was able to take off and have this breakout season that he's had is because Purvis Estupinian, who was brought in from Brighton to replace Teo Hernandez, didn't convince and got injured, and they didn't have another option at that position. So then they put him in there. Oh, shoot, this kid's actually pretty good. And Bartasaghi, to be fair, has been, he's been through the Milan ranks, and he's gotten that sort of reputation as being like, hey, he could be a good squad player in the similar ilk of Matteo Gabbia, for example, or like a Davide Calabria. But it's only because of injury they play him. Same thing with Napoli. Vergara, 23 years old, because of all the injuries they've had. Oh, shoot, this kid's pretty good. Well, we didn't get a chance to see him because you're playing everybody else.
Yeah. So, and they were going to sell, going back to the Vergara thing, they were going to sell Vergara, and then they're forced to play him, and he scored, and they were like, actually, let's not bother. We'll keep a hold of him. And then but I think it all stems from that thing. Do you think then, going away from talking about the reform that's needed, I think we're all aware. Any Italian football team any Italian football fan is aware that the reform needs to be across the board, really, and you need to be bringing in the right people who can drive it from the bottom up. And I think there's going to be some years where it's going to be probably just as painful for Italian fans as it has been, because I don't think, as you say, taking it back, I don't think it's going to be a quick turnaround, obviously. So you're going to have to go backwards before you go forwards. So you're looking at 4 years, maybe next World Cup. Is that even when you look at it, whether or not they qualify for that? I don't think it's a disaster if FIFA are talking about expanding it to even more teams now. So it's kind of like, will Italy just eventually get in on the basis that there's that many teams going? But do Italy need to accept that maybe the next Euros, and the next World Cup potentially, and maybe obviously they're hosts of 2032 as it stands. Do you think Italians just need to accept, look, this is going to be a bit of a shit show for the next X amount of years, whilst everyone just strips it all back and they look to develop a new structure entirely? Because it's obviously not going to be 2 years. It doesn't work that quickly. It's not going to be. No. It's not going to be. It might not even be 4 years. So I think Italian football's at a stage now where it's like, we need to just press the big red button, start again, and then that's going to take time to rebuild. So there's potential that Italy don't make the next World Cup, and it's the one after that. I don't know if you agree, if you see that timeline working that way, but in my head, I'm struggling to see a time when Italy unless they paper over the cracks and don't and just carry on with a new manager and a new president. We've been there before, but I don't know if you agree with that. I don't know if you see the timeline working that way, or you're confident that maybe 4 years' time Italy can go again.
I think the upcoming Euro is that key stimulus, that key moment of measuring how they stack up, right? Because I think there's levels to it, right? You're going to play some good quality European sides, and then obviously there's levels to it, right? You're playing like the Frances, the Germanys, all those sorts of things. What we can't think about, we used to win these competitions. You can't think that way. You can't be like, hey, like, how do we get to being France? No. No, you can't think that way. You got to be in a position where, hey, it's gotten so bad, it's baby steps. It's pushing the right buttons one at a time, to forge an identity, restructure things, and head in a direction that is a common one when it comes to the ideas, the philosophies, the ways of talent development and talent integration. That's, in my view, how it has to work. I think if you, from a reasonable lens, you can't expect us to go into the next Euro and start kind of being able to, compete with some of these powers when they're so far ahead. They're much more modern in the way they play and the way they go about business. So that's sort of my feeling towards it. I mean, I think it's difficult to say now, but I think the way they go about reforming when it comes to the federation president, the other directors, right? We're seeing names like Baggio come back in, for all the things that he tried to bring dozen years ago or so. I think Demetrio Albertini, who used to play for Milan, has held multiple roles within the federation. He raised a lot of ideas and mentioned these same concerns years ago, fell on deaf ears. Maldini, I think you need to get non-system people. And what I mean by that is people that are not, hey, well, we fired Gravina, so then we brought in the next guy that's under him.
Yeah.
What does that do?
Or I think you need to get rid of everyone.
This is Gravina's buddy, or this is, the Tavecchio's buddy, so we're bringing them in. Oh, they used to work under Tavecchio, so now we're going to shoehorn them into this role. No. You need to start with something fresh, to bring fresh ideas to the table, and I think that's the way forward for Italy.
Yeah, I think I completely agree. I think looking back when Gravina came in, I think you're looking at like for like, you're not moving forward really.
And then I'm seeing people mention Galliani. I'm like, I love Galliani, what he brought to Milan. An 80-year-old guy. Like, what freshness is he going to bring to the federation, to Italian football? Yeah. Like, come on.
I personally love Maldini being involved in some way. I don't know if I personally think that's the right step. I think Milan getting rid of him was a terrible move, personally, because I think he's got such a good mind for it. So him going into the Azzurri, I think, and into the federation, I don't know what position he would go in at, but him going in would be a smart move. But I think I agree. You've got to look at it. You've got to get rid of everyone at a certain level and fully scrap, because you're not going to get the freshness. I think I want to go back to what you said there, where we don't want to see Italy trying to think that they can compete with Spain, with France, because that's obviously, they're miles away from that. They're so far away from that. It's incredible. But you mentioned they play a lot more modern, and I think that's a key point, because I think Italy are stuck in the past with a lot of things, both as a country and as a federation and a football sort of structure. Stadiums and all that. We're not getting to the infrastructure around that, but you look at stadiums and revenues and the fight against piracy being their main priority, for example. It's all this sort of stuff where I think Italy's stuck in the past, but I think tactically they have not evolved at all. You look at teams who played in Europe this season as a club level, and I think that's a good indication of where Italy is at as a tactical nation, because they look so tired and sluggish. Every other team was really quick, but Italy are still playing 3-5-2, for example, or caveats of it. They're playing some form of that system. And I think the failure to tactically evolve has never been more clear than this season. I personally don't think, in terms of Inter's performance, Napoli's performance, Juventus's performance, and then you now get into, and then Milan, and then you get into the Azzurri playing in the qualifiers, and then these playoffs. I don't know what you think, but I think even the training, sort of how they coach coaches, needs completely reformed as well. And I think that's failed to evolve tactically. At one point, Italian coaches were the best in the world. There was no one that touched them. Now, you very rarely see an Italian coach linked with a massive job. You've got probably two nowadays. I mean, Max Allegri was linked with Real Madrid, but I don't know how much truth was in that. But you've probably got two Italian coaches who are being touted with bigger moves, and you look at the one at Ajax. His name escapes me. He was at Ajax.
Farioli.
Yes, Farioli. That's the one. And then Maresca. And then you look at that's the only two coaches really. Antonio Conte is probably not going to get touched by like a bigger side again for a while.
He might be kind of towards the end of his But that's why I think he might be in a pretty appealing option, because I don't think who else is he truthfully going to coach in Serie A? Like, is he going to go abroad again? Do most of these big clubs or the opportunities that might arise appeal him? I mean, it ends typically the same way with him. For as good as a coach as he is, he's not a
Yeah.
project-based
No.
manager. He's someone that, hey, you have the skeleton and bones of a winner. Like, let me come in and extract, move the chess pieces. I can get you a winner. You know what
Yeah.
I'm saying? So, yeah, I mean, I think I don't know. It's difficult to say, but I think there's, there's got to be a modernized approach to the way Italy play. I mean, I think, I've seen so many different concepts and ideas come out since Italy failed to qualify for the third straight. And it's very fascinating. The more you hear from other people, the more you realize like how much truth there is to it, right? Where you look at how Italy's tactics are, right? Hey, let's do three in the back, take the ball, and we'll just defend, and like we'll take pressure, versus wanting to play football, play the sport. Like you're restricting these players from playing to their technical ceiling and their abilities, right? You see what these other leagues have to offer when it comes to young players. You're like, dang, this kid's 17, 18. Look at him take guys on 1v1. Look at him being two-footed. Look at him being able to dribble by guys, being physical. And you don't really see that often in Italy with a lot of these players. And if you do, it's not really playing that much, right? Like, I look at guys like Liberali. I look at guys like Francesco Camarda, who's physically a pretty strong kid, and he's just turned 18. So there are examples of where Italy has the opportunity to not clip the wings of these young players and allow them to flourish and be expressive and play a more modern game. But then it all reverts back to it being results based. And hey, well, we need to win this game. We got to make sure we just get a result here and do this and do that. Come back, defend, do this. Look at that's what it is. And until they start trying to, evolve, I think we'll still see more of the same.
Yeah, I think that is exactly right. To be honest, I think there's multiple things we've discussed in this episode. Basically, that has outlined what are so many issues in Italian football, and it all stems with changing at the top and completely rebuilding down. And I think youth development is not great, and I think the reform doesn't even have. I think for me, it has to stem wider than just the FIGC setup and the national team setup.
Yeah, for
You've got to be looking at the structures of the leagues. You've got to be looking on how they work. You've got to be looking on sort of stadiums. You've got to be looking at commercial side of things. I hate calling. For me personally, I hate calling football a product, but you've got to look at it as the product. Premier League look at it as a product. Spain are looking at it as a product. And I think the commercial decisions from the current setup, both at FIGC level and then it's like Serie A level, I think they've all been terrible, which has hindered the league even further. But I just think there's multiple situations here where we've got lack of youth development. Clubs can't trust youth, so therefore there's that lack of youth development. Clubs need revenue, so therefore they're relying on results. They can't generate revenue from matchday experience because the stadiums are falling apart and no one wants to go. TV rights aren't sorted until the season's actually started. Sponsorships, they're fighting piracy for some reason more than anything. And then you sort of look at it all.
Code. They don't pass code, not to cut you off, but if I'm correct, wasn't the San Siro supposed to be a host venue for, I think, an upcoming Euro? And they were like, oh no, like it doesn't pass code. And then that was the domino to fall to now it be like, oh, okay, yeah, no, Inter Milan now we'll give you a stadium. It's like, thank you, finally. Like,
yeah,
you know
exactly.
What I'm saying?
Exactly, and I think it's the bureaucracy, it's the politics surrounding just Italy in general that factors to it. And I think you're looking at a very complex situation, which I think it's. I wouldn't be the one trying to break it all down and sort of look at ways to do it, because it's a very challenging, complex situation. But I think some key points for me is, it's the youth development. I think the coaching of the coaches and how Italy are educating coaches, I think probably needs to look at in terms of that tactical evolution, because I don't think that tactical evolution is there, that freshness is there, and then therefore modern football's leaving Italy as a nation, both national and club level, behind. And then I think commercial as a product, I think Italian football is just way behind where it needs to be in terms of that front. So I think, we're in a very dire situation, and I don't think it's going to get better anytime soon. I don't think it's going to get better quickly, but I think it's now at a point where Gravina's resigned, Buffon's resigned, Gattuso's going, and it's elections in June. So there's baby steps being made in the right direction, but I won't be satisfied until I see the whole thing fall and fully looked at from top to bottom. But I think we'll leave it at that, to be quite honest with you, because I think we've discussed nicely the problems with Italian football. It's a bit of a doom and gloom episode. Get my words out. But I think it's required at a time when Italy have failed to qualify for yet another World Cup. I wish we had chatted on better circumstances, Matt. I do agree. But thank you for coming on. I normally like to give whoever I've got on at the time 20 seconds at the end of the show to plug what they want, what you've got going on, whether it's a podcast or whatever. Yeah, 20 seconds to plug what you want.
Sure. You guys can follow me on Twitter at Matt_Santangelo, on Instagram at Matt_Santa22. And you can follow my podcast, That Milan Podcast, on all social channels, including YouTube, Spotify, and Apple. And the way I always sort of show my appreciation for those who invite me on their podcast and to do content with them, I thank you, Luke.
Yeah, no, thank you very much. Yes, so that's it, guys, for this episode of the FORZA CALCIO Podcast. Leave it 5 stars. Don't forget to follow across the socials. Follow Matt. Subscribe to the YouTube. Wherever you get your podcasts, drop a rating because it really helps the podcast grow. And finally, don't forget to subscribe to the newsletter. Ciao, ciao.